Level up with the new AAA Commanders MVP membership. Get all the benefits of AAA plus exclusive experiences, discounts, and tickets. Already a AAA member? Upgrade for free or join today at AAA.com/Commanders. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget you can read my work on ESPN.com. Now, I want to apologize for everybody who tuned in to the live stream show on Tuesday night. There was an issue with the link to go for my end to go live. It wasn't working, so we had to basically call an audible. So I apologize. We will get back to that next week for sure. But in the meantime, I was supposed to have Ben Standig on with me on the live stream, but instead Ben and I recorded a podcast where I hope we answered what would have been a lot of your questions and even addressed the kicker, because I know a lot of you concerned, as everybody should be. Anyways, so I apologize to everybody who tuned in, and we'll get back to that next week for sure, get whatever the bugs were worked out, and go from there. So, but anyways, I was gracious enough for Ben to stick around with this. And by the way, the end got kind of cut off pretty quick. We were done talking and went to ask Ben one more thing, or he had one more thing to say, but then things got cut off. So just kind of an all-around night for the recording sessions anyways. So by the way, before I get to my conversation with Ben, for you Gold members, we'll be doing a private Zoom at 7:30 Eastern time on Thursday. Look for the link. Join me then. And then don't forget, before the game on Sunday from Atlanta, I will be doing another private chat for any club member. So please, more of you take advantage of this. And that'll be a few hours before the game, before kickoff on Sunday. So, folks, that's about all I got. Ben and I are going to get into everything. We know that Terry McLaurin's getting a second opinion on his quad. The one thing I know, and I told you the other day, I'm like, it can't be all that serious, because he was still on the field. Like, after he got hurt on the play, he bounced up and is ready to celebrate what he thought was a touchdown. And then later, after Luke McCaffrey's touchdown, he's jogging, running down to the end zone to retrieve the ball from McCaffrey. So that is why I didn't think it was all that bad, but that, not being that bad still might mean he has to, take it easy for a little bit. So we don't know, but we'll find out more on Wednesday from Dan Quinn, see if McLaurin's practicing or not, and see what happens throughout the week. And same thing with Jaden Daniels and all the other injured players. So anyways, folks, that's it for me. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Ben Standig from the last Man Standing podcast, as well as his Substack. Commanders fans, this is for you. Level up with the brand new AAA Commanders MVP membership. You'll receive all the benefits of AAA, such as 24/7 roadside assistance, plus chances to win game tickets, access to exclusive team events and experiences, along with 15% off Commanders gear at the online pro shop. Already a AAA member? Add the Commanders MVP membership for free. Head to AAA.com/Commanders to upgrade or join the squad and put your fandom in drive. If you've ever had to hire someone, you know how difficult that can be. Well, the future of hiring looks much brighter, because ZipRecruiter's latest tools and features help speed up finding the right people for your roles, so you save valuable time. And now you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. With ZipRecruiter's new advances, you can easily find and connect with qualified candidates in minutes. There are more than 320,000 new resumes added to ZipRecruiter monthly, which means you can reach more potential hires and fill roles sooner. Use ZipRecruiter and save time hiring. 4 to 5 employees who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. And if you go to ZipRecruiter.com/audio right now, you can try it for free. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. When I needed to find good seats at a cheap price to watch my Cavs in Washington or another market, I turned to the Game Time app and saved close to 50% off my tickets. Game Time offers the best prices, and you know your total up front, so there are no surprise fees at checkout. They have a lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. One app can help provide amazing lifetime experiences by allowing you to see events you might otherwise have missed. Download the Game Time app and use the code KEIM, K-E-I-M, for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Ben. So for those of you who tuned in for a live stream show, Obviously, this is not live, so I apologize for that. There was a little bit of an issue with the live stream link on our end, not yours. So I apologize for that. So Ben is gracious enough to do it here. We're going to record our a podcast here and answer whatever questions you may have had, or try to guess what questions you may have had. Probably a lot about the kicker. I don't know. Anyways, Ben, before we get into some topics on the Commanders and all that, let people know what you have going on besides the Last Man Standing podcast.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, I've my new site is on Substack, Last Man Standig. You can find it lastmanstandig.substack.com. I just took my writing over there. It's been a lot of fun building a community as John has done here with his podcast crew. So yeah, no, it's been fun and there's something to be said for being your own boss. So there could be worse things in the world. So yeah, it's been good.
Tell them what they get. If they sign up for your Substack, what all are they going to get?
Yeah, I mean, you get access to all my writing. You get access to video live chats. I do like the one we were supposed to do here. The technology didn't allow it. But yeah, profiles, features, news nuggets, all that good stuff. And it's been pretty good response so far. So and there's different. You can monthly or annual, whatever you want to do, subscription. So yeah, I appreciate it. Check it out.
There you go. So let's dive into the Commander stuff. And on Tuesday we I think pretty much knew if a guy's coming off an injury in a game, you're going to get perhaps a second opinion or get some more information, whatever you have. But that's what's going on with Terry McLaurin. What's your level of concern with this team with all these injuries?
I mean, definitely getting to be a concern. Going into the year, everyone wants to know what do you think the record is, and I'm like, look, I can look to the team and as it is and think, okay, they can still be 10 plus win team, but man, you just figured that some sort of regression is coming. That's just how life works. And injury was one of the ones you had to wonder about, and already, they've lost a lot of guys. There's uncertainty here, not just with now Terry McLaurin, with Jaden Daniels, of course, and others. So it's definitely being concerned. And in some of the positions, they just don't have a lot of depth. I
Right.
mean, that was the thing about last week. The four guys, between Eckler, Wise, Bates, and Noah Brown, man, they really don't have viable backups, true backups at many of those spots. So it's going to be challenging if Terry were to somehow be out. I mean, I really hope Gary Clark and Art Monk are hanging around because they're going to need some bodies out there.
And that's the thing is that's why I say how much can this team withstand with this? Because like last year, I think if you had to say the top five healthiest teams, they're probably in that group last year. And that's obviously a key factor in any team's success. And I don't know that there's a rhyme or reason to, or if there's a common thread with all these going on, or if it's just bad luck. But how much do you feel like they can withstand? And how much, like what areas are you most concerned about with this?
Well, the receiver would be probably. Well, I mean, look, Jaden Daniels is obviously top of the list, but at least we saw they have a viable
Right.
backup if need be. So I'm not saying they don't need Jaden. I'm just saying Marcus Mariota's pretty good. If they were to somehow lose Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown is not ready to go back, and maybe even if he is, I mean, what are we looking at here? I mean, it's already a question about who would play in place of Noah Brown, and Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey, Chris Moore. Okay, in this game against the Raiders, it was enough, but I don't know if that's going to be the case in a lot of weeks. So I think that's a huge uh, concern. I mean, John Bates. I know people are happy with what Ben Standig did from a blocking standpoint, but John Bates needs to needs to get back. We don't know what's going on at least yet with Trey Amos. We haven't gotten an update from Dan Quinn with the calf. We heard that Lattimore cleared concussion protocol. That's good, but this is a team that already put Jonathan Jones on IR. If somehow Trey Amos were to miss any time, now you're getting really deep into the weeds here. And then, safety, obviously Will Harris goes on IR. Percy Butler also left that game with an injury. It doesn't sound like it's a longer term issue, but and that's one of their deeper positions. But I don't know how much you want to say Tyler Owens is going to have to play
Right.
significant snaps. And I know they just aren't Darnell Savage, but I'm not going to assume anything for him from week one. So yeah, and we're not even talking about the running back situation where they have bodies, but we'll see over
That
the long haul.
right. And that was the concern. When you start losing guys in week two, that's always like, there's going to be another wave of them. And I think like last year was John Allen was the longest stint on IR of any starter. It was like 9 games. So, and you're right, like Savage, he's just going to get here. I mean, listen, he was just released too. And so I mean, when will the help come from him and how much will it be? I know he is a guy that they liked back in 2019 before the owner said you're taking a quarterback. Would have been him or Montez at 15 instead. But, a long time from that time. And he can help, but at what point and in what way? So that's the thing. What would your approach be with Jaden at this point? Like, would I think did you ask him, was it you who asked Quinn about if the Mariota's game impacts that at all? Did you ask?
That wasn't me, but yeah, he said these two things do not correlate. And sure, I totally get that if Jaden can play, Jaden's going to play. On the other hand, they did win, so they're not 1-2 going into this. Mariota looked good. He didn't look rusty, which was for me, at least some level of
Mhm.
concern since he missed all of
Right,
training
right.
camp. So that has to give you at least a little more confidence to say, okay, if Jaden's even borderline, we don't need to force this. And I'm not saying you would have had to force it at 1-2, and Mariota looked bad, but at the same time, it's a little bit easier. So, look, I mean, we don't quite know the degree of the injury. Dan Quinn said we could ask the doctor, so maybe we'll get to ask to do that this week.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a joke.
yeah.
So yeah, no, without knowing too much, it's hard to say. But if there's even any question, I would probably rest him again. I mean, the Chargers game in Week 5. I mean, I'm not discounting Atlanta, but the Chargers game in Week 5 looks like maybe it'll be the biggest test they have in this stretch coming up. So if they don't feel comfortable with Jaden on any level, I would just sit him again.
Right, and I'm with you on that. Like, if he's healthy, you play him. Right, if he feels good, play him. No, don't rest him another week just because Mario did it. But it certainly gives you the ability to be very careful with him and not so much make a mistake, but not feel like, oh, you've got to get him back out there because all these guys are hurt. The one thing I will say, if he does come back and there's no McLaurin, one thing that Jaden is really good at is like basically making others around him look pretty good. And, but you'd like to see one of those two of those top three receivers out there. Debo will be out there. But, I mean, Chris Moore has been actually during the regular season has been better than he was in the preseason. So, like, can they muster something out of that group?
You know, it the part that's tricky. Look, obviously, in 2 of the 3 games, they've looked really good, right? Particularly on defense in both games, but the offense was good this week, and they did enough against the Giants. Obviously, the Giants and the Raiders might be 2 of the 5 worst teams in the league. They certainly have 2 of the 5 worst offensive lines in the league, right? So it's hard to completely judge on that because the other game they played arguably the team that was the best in the league before they lost this last week. Green Bay lost to Cleveland, and that's the other extreme. So I still not quite positive what we're looking at here, but yeah, at some point, my issue with the next man up mantra, while I understand the mentality, the reality is at some point that's not a thing. You can't just keep saying next man
Right,
up. At
right,
some point,
right,
the next man up is me and you. So
right.
what are you going to do? And I'm not saying we're there yet, but and I'm curious what you think because I don't know if we've actually talked about this too much. So much of the conversation about what they did this offseason, trading for Tunsil, trading for Debo, things like that, people kept saying they went all in this year. And I disagree. I think they just did what they had to do to get the talent level back up the
Yes.
level.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Because
agree with
last year
you.
they just weren't that good. And so when you miss any pieces, you don't have a lot of depth on this group. They're still recovering from what they were left with the previous regime. So the depth is just too much of a concern. Plus, older roster, all these things. So yeah, they can get by for another week probably, but you can't have a lot any more than what we think they have right now.
Right. And I agree with you. I think that during the offseason, you're kind of because their drafting was so bad in the prior regime, not just depth wise, but with all those first round and those high picks that they missed and are no longer here. Like that is hard to recover from. And so you're trying to balance building with through the draft with getting some guys in here. And Tunsil was a necessity. They wanted to get a left tackle in here. And listen, man, they've already benched Brandon Coleman at guard. So they needed to get somebody there. And Debo was not a all-in type guy. He's a guy like, hey, maybe you can get something out of him. I think there are other guys, if you were went out and were really aggressive getting all this big time talent, But yeah, so I agree with that end of it. But you're right; it leaves you thin in some areas, and like the offensive line is an example. And I think the funny thing is, I'm curious to hear how what you thought of the O line the other day, because there were times where just like what Jaden does at times, Mariota made the line look better because of his quick decisions. And there were times where like, oh, that could have been an issue. The running backs, Rodriguez, his first three runs would have been stopped, and maybe Brian Robinson, they may have been stopped. I don't know, but he made good cuts and showed good vision on those to get out of some bad stuff. So what did you think about with because there were a couple changes there?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about we're making fun, but appropriate fun of the previous draft classes. Hey, Chris Paul still
I
hanging
know.
around,
I know.
former seventh round pick, and he got in there and didn't, according to the advanced stats I saw, he had a bunch of zeros next to his name. So that was pretty good. I mean, I think the reality is like Dan Quinn's talking about competition, and he meant, of course, Wiley, Chris Paul, Allegretti, and Brandon Coleman. I think the problem is that sounds good in theory, except I don't know that any of those guys are necessarily right now would be viewed as starters by other teams. I mean, they have four guys that can play, and I'm not saying they're bad, but yeah, I mean, to that end, I think it's like trying to do as best you can with what you have, not necessarily having a rock star line. Cosmo will be back here at some point, and I'm sure they hope that Brandon Coleman in particular can rise up. But it's still a bit of a work in progress. Not to mention, I think Josh Connerly was better this last game than he was against the Packers. No, Micah Parsons probably helped, but at the same time, it's still he's still learning. So yeah, I think they were better. And you're right, having the mobile quarterback who's also smart but knows how to get rid of the ball definitely helps the cause. But again, they had over 200 yards rushing, so got to give the line some credit for that too.
Absolutely, sure. And I do wonder, like when Cosme comes back, if there's still some question at left guard, Wiley can always go over there too. Like he's a guy that's proved to be valuable because he can back up multiple spots now. So, what do you with Coleman, what are your thoughts on that situation? I'm just curious.
I mean, it was definitely a surprise, but from the standpoint, like for the same reason I would have given why when people were saying bench Connerly, I'm like, no, no, no. Like once you put the young guy out there, you got to let it go for a while, right? I mean, this is you invested a draft pick out of him, you believe there's potential, and Coleman, they already shifted his position, so this is only his, he only played two games at left guard in the pros. I know he played some in college. Um, so I would have thought, let him ride it out a bit. But, clearly, the numbers weren't good after 2 weeks. The tape wasn't great after 2 weeks, and they decided to make that move. It feels though it's more than just the play. And I don't mean like he had any off the field issues or
Right,
his
right,
bad
right.
attitude. It's just maybe more like, hey, you know, dude, we need more from you. We need, we
Right.
gotta, trying to light that fire under you or whatever, hokey term you want to use. It feels like there's something like that going on. Because I mean, I know that Chris Paul played better, but like, can't imagine that the plan is to say Chris Paul over Brandon Coleman. It feels like, hey, we're trying to send a message to you. Plus, he was inactive, which maybe isn't the biggest deal in the world, but it says something too. So that's kind of what it feels like to me. And obviously, they need him to be a thing. I mean, he's already getting benched, but he's ever gotten benched twice essentially. As he said, got knocked out of tackle and now
Mhm.
guard. He's at least on notice, I would say at a minimum.
Well, and I also wonder, Ben, too, like there's a lot of in and outs with him with the injuries.
Yeah.
And, that's, I think after a while, does that wear on a staff? That's the part that I wonder about too, that is this a whole combination of things? And that Paul did have a good summer. He definitely was better. And so I also wondered, Ben, what the gap was between the two coming out of camp, because Paul was pretty good. And there were times after Coleman came back where they would have the five starting linemen and they'd have Paul behind the group and then rotating with him. So there is some of that competition stuff, but it's still 2 games in. Like that was, but I do think I think it's all kind of related together with it.
Have you ever seen a four-player competition for a guard spot? Because of whenever, if as it stands right now, there's four guys who could potentially justifiably be the guy at left guard when Cosby comes back. That's bizarre. It's
Right. Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah.
No, as someone else said after the game, like, how could you as a journalist not not say something about the changing of the guards. So
But I'm
I
bummed.
just did. But yeah, no, it's the funny thing is too, back in the day, I remember like Mike Shanahan would say, like, you don't win with bleeping guards. And in that system, you did not. But I think here, when you're pulling them the much as much they do, you do need some guys who can play there. And so I thought Wiley did a nice job. I didn't think he was an issue at all. And I do you think they'll stick with that lineup this week?
I mean, I know. I also think this could just be me reading too much into this. I also think that these coaches love to talk about competition, right? I mean, last
Totally.
year, they didn't anoint Jaden the starter until it was like, come on, already, because they wanted to use that as a carrot going forward for other guys. It almost felt like this was Dan Quinn's way of saying, "Hey, I know training camp's over, but we're going to bring up the term competition again." And I don't know what the actual competition was in terms of like, did they have like certain, did they really have tryouts and then those two guys won? I don't know how you would go away from this group. I mean, unless Brandon Coleman comes out there and he looks like, this is a really old reference, but looks like the way like Forrest Whitaker did in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, where he's just murdering people. Unless it's like that, I don't see how you're going away from Chris Paul and Wiley at this point. So I would think it would be like that. But, again, I buy it when he says it's not done, that Coleman can't get back in there. I just, for this week, I would seem unlikely.
I heard they just fly him in for games.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
there you go. There you go. And I would agree. I think you can stick with that group. How because of all this stuff going on, and with Atlanta coming off the ugly loss that they had, this I mean, obviously this is going to be a very tough game on the road, et cetera. But what do you make of this game? During the season, my mornings get chaotic. I often feel I just don't have time or energy to make a big breakfast, so I grab my Huel Black Edition to kickstart my day. I feel satiated for hours and ready to go. Spelled Huel, their Black Edition powder is a complete meal so you feel full, focused, and ready for your day. And now, Huel just dropped a first of its kind Super Greens drink in a can. It's called the Huel Daily Greens Ready to Drink. Forget powders, forget pills. This is your daily greens, sparkling, refreshing, and ready whenever you are. And it comes in a variety of flavors. Together, Huel makes healthy eating simple. Try both today with 15% off your purchase for new customers with my exclusive code Keim at huel.com/Keim. That's HUEL.com/Keim. Use my code and fill out the post-checkout survey to help support the show. Commanders fans, this is for you. Level up with the brand new AAA Commanders MVP membership. You'll receive all the benefits of AAA, such as 24/7 roadside assistance, plus chances to win game tickets, access to exclusive team events and experiences, along with 15% off Commanders gear at the online pro shop. Already a AAA member? Add the Commanders MVP membership for free. Head to AAA.com/Commanders to upgrade or join the squad and put your fandom in drive.
So my big takeaway from this last game was that um, they did what contending teams should do. They have a ton of injuries. They had the bad taste in their mouth from the Green Bay game. You could easily go, oh, the Raiders, whatever, we got this one. They didn't do any of that. They played the game. They got past their hangover. They didn't look past the opponent. And despite the issues they had with injuries, they did what they had to do. So to me, this kind of feels like it's going to be the same type of deal. And now look, Atlanta, in theory, should be a highly motivated bunch after getting embarrassed like they did last week. But Washington again, if they have that true contender vibe, if this is a team that really is, it doesn't have to have everything clicking to win, then they should be able to go out down there and, I don't want to say just win, but like, it should be more than a puncher's chance of saying, hey, we're going to pull this one out. So, this is the problem with the NFL, though. I mean, it's week to week so much. They go down there and they don't win, whatever, however, and all of a sudden we'll be like, oh boy, here they go again. It's 2-2. You're not feeling great about it. They're going out to LA. They could be 2-3. It's just so week to week this league. So I think they've got, I think they can win, and they're favored by the odds makers. But let's see what kind of bodies they have for
Right.
Sunday.
And I feel, and I don't know this at all, but like we saw Bates working out on the field last week. So and I don't remember seeing Noah Brown out there. Do you?
I don't remember seeing
So,
them.
I don't know necessarily what that means. I just know that's what we saw. So that would be maybe a good sign for him, but you'd like to get one of those playmakers back, whether it's Noah or Terry. And because I think that's what you can where you can attack a little bit too, because you don't want to become one dimensional at all. But you're right. Like, here's the thing. Green Bay looked like world beaters a week and a half ago, and then they lose to Cleveland, who has a good defense, but I mean, come on. So
Yeah.
it's a very weird league. But in two of the three games, Washington has done exactly what a good team should do. They beat up on a bad team or a worse team at home. So but it does it feel like they're off to that kind of start, or do the injuries just kind of obscure everything?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like I if this was a year ago, we'd be like, oh wow, pretty good start for a team that I didn't have necessarily high expectations for. Well, the expectations are now different, and again, they're 2-1, despite they winning a game without your
Right.
starting quarterback. I don't care what's going on,
So,
is a really good win. But yeah, it's just the extremes of the opponents in a league where everybody feels like they're in the middle. They've had the extreme of opponents, one of the better ones and two of the worst ones. And Atlanta does is last week aside is somewhere closer to that
yeah.
bunch in the middle. So we'll see what I mean. Look, their defense looked really good the start of the year, but their pass rush, which they have not had in forever, has looked good. And we know on offense, you got Bijan Robinson, Drake London. I won't say Kyle Pitts because fantasy football players will yell at me, but they've got some guys in the offensive line, and obviously Michael Penix, is a young quarterback, and he's not where Jaden is, but there's he was drafted high in the first round for a reason, and there's potential there. So at some point that's going to click, you would think. So yeah, I mean it's again that's what makes this it is. I know it's tough for us, or at least for me, covering the team and having to figure out week to week what they are, let alone if you're a fan, the ups and downs and how you have to sit in that for several days with a loss, or the other way. Oh my God, here we go, we're so awesome, and
Right.
then you go that way too. So it's very challenging right now.
I think the one thing too that stood out with this team last year, they are a together, tough, resilient group. And I think you're going to get that tested big time right now. And that's so I think now it doesn't mean that if they don't win or they don't do it, that they're not, because it's hard to overcome these injuries time after time after time. But I do think that's a quality that can help push through some of these situations. And the way they talk about, you're right, like the next man up thing, I think you're right. Like, it's great to have a next man up, but when it's a next unit up, now you're that's a different ballgame. Like, you're talking about multiple replacements versus one or two. That's tougher. So, that's the thing that's going to be the challenge here, Ben. And one of those guys, Mariota, we didn't talk about him, but I am curious, and I talked a lot about him myself. What did you think about him? What jumped out to you the most about him the other night or day?
Well, look, he is, the other day when he spoke with us before the game, and I asked him, because we were talking a lot about Jaden getting hit and things like that. I'm like, you're a guy that runs. How did you kind of navigate the risk reward? And I said at the very end, if you have, I don't know if you heard that part, because you see him go out there and like,
He lowered his
he's
shoulder.
yeah, he's not. He's we're telling the kid to not do this, and here's a guy who's been league 10 years, still doing these kinds of things. Um, Look, he's very very savvy. I mean, I think we all, well, maybe not you, but collectively, I probably owe him an apology for the vibe when they signed him. Was like,
Oh, no, no, I was part of that.
yeah, okay.
I admit
So
it.
like, I mean, I understood why they did it. There wasn't much out there, but it was like, all right, whatever. But he's been, this has been a great fit for him with this system, with this group. And I think the thing that just stands out to me about him in general is you don't see all these athletes generally are macho guys. They're very, egocentric. Just you have to be to some degree to be a pro athlete at this level. And he is a guy that he shows his emotions. This means so much to him. He's had an interesting journey from being a Heisman Trophy winner, a number two pick. He had some good moments with the Titans, but then things kind of devolved and he's bounced around. And you can tell he's been kind of flailing about his career. And then to find a home here, it really means a lot to him. And I think that's why you can see the players rally behind him. And he said, "Hey, belief is a really important thing, and the guys really believed in me. And I think part of the reason they believe in him is they know how much it means to him because they
Right.
see it on him. It's not you don't have to guess; it's right there. So I think this all of that bodes so well, for whenever he has to play. On top of the fact that he's, effective throwing, he can get out on the move, he knows where the ball needs to go, things like that.
Yeah, no, I think for sure. And I think just the professionalism, it can't be underscored how good of a quarterback room that is. And not just because they all get along, but I think that helps. But just like there's deep support there. And I think it also goes to Jaden too, because you see the way he supports because he knows the support he's received as well. Like there have been guys in the past who maybe wouldn't have reacted the same way that he did. So I think like that's a positive for the entire locker room, but I think it's reciprocated too, and I think that's always a beneficial thing. Last thing, Ben, because I think if we don't talk about the kicker, I think we might be people might charge after us or whatever. I think everybody. I'm assuming we all have the same thoughts here. Like, do you feel secure with Matt Gay at this point?
No, I mean, I think we all made the same joke when he missed the 37-yarder. I guess there'll be, tryouts and Ashburn beginning of next week. Then obviously he comes in, makes the last two. I wonder if somebody had to tell Dan Quinn he made the 56-yarder, or at that point he was seeing stars and wasn't sure what was going on. Yeah, look, I mean, the basic story was, hey, he's got a really big leg, but he's a bit erratic. At least he makes everything inside of 50. Last time I checked, 37 is way inside of 50, and he missed it, and that put him at 1-4. So, yeah, I don't think this is a safe situation at all. I am sure. Not only do they want him to succeed, they don't want to go through what they did last year with one kicker after another after
Right.
another. Did I see that Austin Seibert retired, by the way? Did I see
Yeah,
that?
I didn't realize that, and I think that was either was that today or is it recently? I don't know, but I just
yeah, I saw
saw
it somewhere.
I didn't
Yeah,
I just saw it today, and because I didn't realize that, but I don't think he'd have been an option for them anyways.
yeah,
That's the
yeah.
problem, and people keep bringing up Young Ho Koo, like he's been terrible. I mean, really bad, and that's the problem. There aren't, and they paid a lot for this guy, which that part surprised me, but you know. I think I could see him giving him a couple more weeks, but I don't think you can go much longer than that if he's this erratic. Because as you know, like to me, early in training camp, okay, he looked pretty good. And then it was like midway through, it's been kind of up and down.
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously the big thing is he has a much bigger leg than the guys they had last year. Anything outside of 50 last year, that was basically, I'm sure Cliff did in mind, but it was basically we were either going forward or we're punting. And at least now that's an option. But look, I think Dan Quinn, if you want to know Dan Quinn's opinion on it, just listen to what he said after the game. He was like, hey, cool. I'm glad he made it. We have a lot of confidence in him. But at some point, that confidence has to be rewarded with actually making kicks. And so, yeah, he did make the last two. So great. But yeah, it does. It definitely felt like Quinn was kind of saying, "Hey, I can't keep going on this roller coaster
No, no,
too much longer here."
here's the other thing: like you keep losing guys on offense, those 3 points are going to matter. Like they haven't mattered in some of these. Like the Packers game, it could have helped them. We don't know what would have happened, but it certainly would
Sure.
have helped them. But those points are going to matter the more guys you lose. So I think you're going to want to. You can't have. And it's funny because somebody asked me like, you know bring in competition because you got to let them know he's got a short leash. Like kickers know they're on a short leash in this league. Like they know their stats and they know what stats aren't acceptable. And I think if he doesn't improve and you can't be kicking balls out of bounds on the kickoffs if you're not making your field goals.
Yeah. I
It's kind of an unwritten rule. It's like so.
yeah. No, I'm always like the belief like if aliens came down from outer space and you said, okay, let's explain to you sports. Here's football. All the other sports I think are pretty simple. Here's football. You got the offense, you got the defense. Okay. Wait, who's this guy? What's going on? This guy comes out to kick a ball. He's not doing anything else. He's just what? What is going on here? It's very weird. And obviously, I mean, I'm sure the players like him as a guy, but it's got to be super weird. You're out there, you're getting beat up, and this guy comes in and he misses a kick. You're like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
Yeah, no, for sure. And so, but I think that kick right before halftime was let's see what he does from here on out. Because was that the kind of kick, and then making one over 50? That was, that's a big deal. So, like, is that the one, or the 40, not the one before halftime, the 46-yarder
Yeah.
before that? Like, that was a big deal to me because, like, then he makes then at half. Does that turn him around? So that bought him another week. So what could buy him another week is a few more kicks. So we'll see. Anyway, Ben, That's all I got. Do you got anything else?
No, I appreciate the run as always.
That's it for this episode. Kind of got cut off there, like I told you. I appreciate you tuning in. Thanks to Ben for joining me. I will be back on Thursday morning. I'm going to be hopefully have Nikki Javala on to talk about just a midweek stuff, things we learned in the locker room on Wednesday, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Talk to you next time.